Hello, everyone. Welcome to Big League Dreaming, the podcast, a show about fulfilling your dreams and taking it to the next level. I'm John Gonzalez, and once again, joined by all the boys. Two of the three are with us today, and joining us from North Carolina is the oldest son, number one, Zach Gonzalez. Zach, how you doing?
Doing good. Holiday season, so the family's gearing up for Christmas. Missing baseball, but we're doing good.
Definitely missing baseball, but with all the winter meetings going on, the signings and everything, it's been kind of a fun time to watch what's happening. Zane, you're getting ready for a Christmas vacation, right? So you got a lot of kids on campus. We should mention Zane is son number three, and he's still in baseball. He's coaching at Indiana University at South Bend as a pitching coach and recruiting coordinator. And you guys are getting ready to take a little break right before you start your season in January.
Yep, guys are going through their finals week right now, so big time of the year for us because we send the guys home and hope we've prepared them well enough to kind of be on their own for the next 3 to 4 weeks, and then get back in January and got about 5-6 weeks and we're playing.
Love it. I love it. If this is your first time on the podcast, as I said earlier, it is Big League Dreaming. It's a show about fulfilling your dreams and taking it to the next level. We've been around for a couple of years now and having a lot of fun with the podcast. It's a dad and his three sons. You met two of the three a couple seconds ago. I'm John, the dad. And what we do is we just talk about our life revolved around baseball. We love playing the game. We love coaching the game. It's been a big part of our lives as a family. It's kind of what keeps us together and has been the glue, along with our faith and of our family time as well. But guys, let's get into it. Before we introduce our guest, Zach, we should tell everyone that the video is up, right? Son number two, Ty, is not with us tonight, but he's busy working on his show and his podcast. But he finished the production. It's up, right? Zach, it's up.
It is live. Yep. Ty did a great job editing and producing that video, putting it all together. Our video of going to 3 Major League Baseball games in 24 hours from last August is now live. I think I texted it to like 70 people. It's really cool to get texted back and get responses. Go check it out if you haven't seen it yet.
It's available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. It's available as well. But you'll see the four of us sprinting through airports, driving through Chicago traffic, watching a game go extra innings, even getting a little spot on the MLB network. It was truly a dream come true. Zane, have you watched the whole thing a couple times already?
Yeah. I watched it. It was funny to kind of go back and rewatch everything, and it was just crazy. I can't believe we actually pulled that off.
We did. I wish Ty was on here to congratulate him on a job well produced. The video turned out great. Always get a chance, check it out. All right, Zach, let's talk a little baseball with our guest. Why don't you introduce him and tell us how you know him?
Yeah, excited to bring out one of my buddies, way back from my Myrtle Beach days when I was coaching in the BCBL, the Beach Collegiate Baseball League. So today we got Eric Hirschbein-Bodnar. It's kind of a mouthful, so we call him H-Bod. He probably still goes by H-Bod. But yeah, Eric now works for Octagon Baseball as a sports agent. So thanks for jumping on, chatting with us. I know it's your busy time of year, but we're happy to have you talking with us, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that my story kind of aligns with you guys just in like my track. I think that obviously my first ever head coaching job was with you, down at Myrtle Beach, competing against each other. Took that, went and coached college baseball for 12 years. Really went from Division III to Division II to Division I. I really got to see the differences and the levels, what it takes, the different players you're recruiting. And then obviously now, used to own a summer collegiate team as well. Worked with that for a while for 6 or 7 years as well, recruiting guys from all over the country, seeing guys to go through the draft. And now my job is to get them through the draft. Now my job is to work with guys in their professional careers. Now my job is to get them from being a draft pick to getting up through a minor league system to getting their big league debut. And then, people think the goal is to get to the big leagues. It's really not. It's to stay there. If your goal is to get there, you're quickly going to fizzle out. And there's a very small percentage that get to stay in the big leagues and have a career and get to arbitration, get to free agency. And really, we're learning every day what it takes, whether it's strength and conditioning, whether it's mental skills, whether it's really, making sure that you have the right team around you. And I'm blessed to, work with a great organization, great resources, but most importantly, better people. The guys that I work with every day, my boss, my colleagues, like we're all in it for the same reason, is to give these guys all the resources they need. So like I said, get drafted at the highest level, go through the minor leagues and then stay in the big leagues. And it's every day putting the right things in your body, working with the right coaches, making sure that if there's something they want to get better at specifically in an off season, communicating with the front office, knowing what they need to get better at, communicating that with the players, showing them the data, getting the right coach to work with in the off season so that every single opportunity we have to get 1% better, we're exhausting all that resources. And like I said, right now is a big time because, like, look, you're with a team now, and especially how the game has changed. You're almost in a minor league system. You're competing against your teammates. You're all trying to get the same goal, and only one shortstop gets called up. Probably about 5 or 6 pitchers get called up. So, like, yeah, you're in the trenches with your boys, but you're almost competing against each other, let alone the guy on the other side of the field. But now it's like, we're in a really unique spot where this is the most important time of the year. Like, if you're not getting better right now in the off season, which we call it the preseason, like, you got to come into camp into spring training ready to go. And if you're not, like, you're already passed on. The guy next year already stepped above you. So right now it's really important to make sure our guys are really healthy, progressing the right way, and they're really focused on what they need to do. So next season they're better than they were last season.
Eric, I'm not sure if I should call you Eric or H-Bod, so I might go back and forth. I love everything that you're saying. I love everything you're saying too, because we're obviously big baseball geeks here, and we love every level of the game. I think you're our first sports agent to be on the podcast, so it'll be fun to ask you some different questions that we typically ask our guests. But before we talk more about this time of the year and how much work it takes to not only get there, but to stay there and to think ahead, be a good teammate, then also at the same time look out for yourself. I love all this stuff you're bringing at us. But let's get to your story real quick. I know you said you coached a little bit against Zach. Where are you from originally, and where did the love of baseball come into your life?
So I'm actually originally from Long Island. Right now I live in Rhode Island. Something I fell in love with when I was a kid growing up. I think that I'll never forget this. I want to say I was 8 years old, and I was coming back from a Little League game, and the coach pulled me from the game for whatever reason, and I was sitting there and I was upset, and then I got in the car and started reciting the game and what moves I would have made differently and, what I would have done at 8 years old. And my dad kind of just smiled at me. And, I grew up in a household where, my mother coached high school tennis for 50 years. She coached a junior Wimbledon's player to winning the Wimbledon tournament as a junior in like the 70s or something like that. So the coaching blood was always in me, but I never had the physical ability to play at the highest level. But I always knew that I was helping my friends out. I was seeing, having an approach at the plate, being able to, I didn't throw hard, so I knew how to mix my pitches. On the mound, I was more of a breaking ball guy. Could throw my changeup at any count. My favorite thing was to get the biggest hitter who looked, twice my size, throw my first pitch changeup and watch him hit a ground ball at third base. But I just knew certain things that I studied because I would sit there with my dad. And, my dad did something growing up that this is the biggest reason why I'm here. Both my parents were teachers, so our summers were our time to spend together. Now, my dad hates flying to this day, terrified of flying. So we would drive cross country and he'd show me all the landmarks. Like we'd go to, the Grand Canyon, we drive from New York. We go to Glacier National Park in Montana. We go to Yellowstone. We spend a week out there as a family. But my rule was if we're going to drive, we're going to stop at as many ballparks as we could along the way. So we went out, to Montana on the way back. We hit Minnesota, St. Louis, Kansas City, a Cubs game, Pittsburgh on the way back to New York. So like my thing was I got to see a lot of games. But then as I got into high school, say before that, in 2001, the Brooklyn Cyclones were started in New York. My dad, as soon as it came out, bought season tickets behind home plate. He shared them with all his teacher buddies, but we went to about 20 games a summer. And his biggest fear was obviously making sure that, I didn't get involved with the stuff going through my teenage years that can kind of sidetrack people from their goals. And we would bond over sitting right behind home plate, watching baseball, and he knew that I was so engaged and into it. And I kind of, again, got to study the ins and outs, kind of see some certain things happen. And that kind of led to my understanding through middle school and high school of understanding the game more from a mental side and studying it than actually the physical ability that I didn't have that some of my teammates had that were better than me. But that kind of led to when I got to college, I tried to walk on to the University of Rhode Island. And the head coach at the time, obviously the guy next to me was throwing 90 miles an hour. I was probably like 83, 84, like nothing crazy. But I was going to transfer to a D3. Like I had, 6 or 7 D3 calls out of high school. Like, hey, come to Plattsburgh University and pitch for us. Come to Pace University. I was like, no, I'm going to go to Rhode Island. Like I love the school, whatever. So the head coach pulled me aside, Jim Foster, and he was one of the smartest baseball guys I've ever been around in my life. He said, "Hey, what's your goal in life?" I was like, "I want to coach." So like going to a Division III school is not really going to help you in that sense. Like stay on my staff and like let's start building your coaching career. And I was like, "You're right. You're 100% right." You know, I could have played D3 and I ended up coaching D3 right after. And if anyone doesn't know, Division III baseball is really, really good. Just the players develop a little later than the Division I players develop when they're 14. So I kind of got into coaching, you know, went from there. My assistant from Rhode Island got the head job at Salve Regina University here in Newport. I went with him my senior year at college. Actually, I was still studying as a 20-year-old, coaching guys older than me at Salve. Did that for 4 years. And I went to the Division II level at Felicia University in Jersey. Then eventually got the Bryant job in 2019. I was there from 2019 until this past fall. But really just always trying to get better and understand the game from, you know, how it's taught, you know, what guys are thinking. And I always said, you know, I could show you something, I could tell you something. Until you feel it, you're not going to be able to make an adjustment. So I was really good in kind of dumbing the really smart things down until kids kind of understood it. But, you know, I kind of think that for myself, I take that mindset into the agent world. Because, like, you kind of have your own team, right? You have, like, I'm looking at my board right now. I got 4 professional clients, you know, 7 college guys I advise, but everyone's different. So it's talking to their coaches, talking to their guys at home, trying to get what they need to do as well as talking to the teams that draft them. Hey, what do you got to see next year? And really coaching these guys from a mental side, getting them to understand and say the same thing 10 different times until it clicks on why it's important and what they really need to do. But I mean, I think that, you know, I think Zane, you can attest to this. Once you're a coach, you're always a coach. When the game's over, you're going to shake that coach's hand because you're going through the same trials and tribulations that they are in their dugout. Kids are kids. The game's the game. It's evolving every day. You know, I think that you look at it 3 years ago, you had to hit 40 home runs and everyone had to hit like Aaron Judge. And now all of a sudden you make the bases bigger and everyone's playing like Acuna. You got to steal 70 bases. You got to get on base. You know, I think now we're looking at guys that have lower strikeout rates, you know, pitchers that have more of a feel instead of throwing 100 miles an hour because the injury rate's high. Like the game's going to evolve again next year whenever the next MVP or the next Cy Young is out there. So I think just being open-minded to the changes and really learning and studying what all these gurus are taking out there and just taking 1% of it and learning kind of why their angle and why their mindset is this way and really being able to communicate that to the right kid. You know, what each kid needs is different. So I think I'm in a different situation just because, again, once you're in it from the coaching side and the love of the game and the love for your kids, like now you're on the agent side. And, you know, one of our hockey agents, I'll never forget it. We were at a convention, you know, our whole group, all of Octagon, Alan Walsh, he's a very famous agent in the hockey world. Like he slammed on the table, like, I will dive on a grenade for my guys. It's like my guys are, you know, we're everything for them. We're the guys that, you know, we're going to roll up our sleeves and do everything we need to do. And that's a mantra that we have across the agency when it comes to any sport. It doesn't matter. Like that's our job. And I think if you're not in it for that reason, then you're not in it for the right reason, then your guys are not going to benefit from it. You know?
Zane, do you want to follow up on some of those comments? Because he had a lot of great things to say, and I'm sure you can relate being the one among us that's a current college coach.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's 100% right in being like, you know, today's kids, you can't teach them all the same. You can't, right? And that's kind of something that we kind of really push on our guys. And it's really hard to get kids kind of out of their shell a little bit early on because, like, they're just so used to being told, this is the way to do it. This is what you got to do. Hey, go do this. Go hit like that. Go throw like this. You know, throw this kind of pitch. And this is the mechanics you need to have, you know, but every kid's different. And that's something we really push on our guys is like, look, you throw is a little bit different than our 6'8" righty. You know, you're a lefty sidearmer. I can't be teaching you guys the same thing. So, you know, that's something we tell every single recruit that comes in. It's like, we're okay with you coming to me and telling me, no, this doesn't work for me. Like, that's what we want for guys. We want for them to be kind of take a little ownership in their development and kind of come to us and be like, hey, this doesn't work for me. And I'm like, good, thank you for saying that. Let's get together. Let's find a plan. Let's find what works for you to get you to that next level. Because, like, this day and age, there's so much information out there. Like, all these kids are seeing everything online, and they want to try. They see a drill on Twitter, and they want to try it, right? But then they go and try, and we rip up a velo machine, and they can't hit off of it, trying to do that same thing. Like, look, clearly that doesn't work for you. So we got to figure out what's going to make it click. And like he's saying, feel is a huge thing. Like when I'm working with a kid, right, we go through an individual phase of like that's what's super nice about NAIA is like we don't have the regulations like NCAA does. Like we can coach our guys pretty much second they step foot on campus until they leave. And then when they come back, we can coach them until the end of the season. So it's during our individual phase, it's super, super nice because I can take a kid and I can be like, hey, let's do some drills, let's do some, certain mechanic stuff to kind of isolate some things and really get you to be able to feel it. And then the next time I see you, we're just going to the mound. Now let's see if you can translate what you were able to feel a day ago to today. And the feel thing is huge, and treating everyone like exactly what they need is a big part of today's game.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything that they're touching on. I do want to, Eric, get into like how you got into the agent world, because it's something that, I mean, working in baseball, being in baseball industry in and of itself is really hard to break into for a lot of people. I'm sure it's the same thing for the agency side of the baseball world. I know you miss being on the field every day.
Oh yeah, for sure. I do miss I don't miss being at the field at 7 a.m. for a noon game. I like showing up in the first inning and now like being able to see my guys. But
yeah, what was that path like? Did you have like a mentor that kind of brought you in? Like how did it all kind of flow for you?
I think I was very lucky. Obviously, I was a GM of a summer ball team for a while. In the NACBL, one of the best leagues in the country, had some of the best guys in the country. We've had 90 guys drafted in 10 years. So like we used to get about 12 to 15 guys a class when there was a 40-round draft. Now we're about 8 to 10 over 3 years, obviously. It's used where freshmen come in and, if they're bigger school guys, they got to kind of be thrown to the fire and learn how to be a pro. Juniors have to really show themselves out and ball out and playing against, Vanderbilt and Oregon and Arkansas and show that they're just as good as them. But anyway, I got lucky. Our founding director of the company, he's from Rhode Island. Ironically, he's a crazy story. He was a life insurance agent and got asked before there were agents in the 70s by, a guy by the name of Wade Boggs and Tim Raines, like, hey, we want you to be our agent. And he was like, yeah, I'm in. Tell me, what do I need to do? This was when they first started agents, but he was there to kind of watch one of his guys that was playing against me. And my assistant coach was like, hey, that's Alan. He's one of the legends of the game. And like, my assistant coach is, in his 50s, so knew about him. And I walked over, introduced myself, said, hey, this is something I've always wanted to get into. And he was like, all right, like, let's grab a coffee. Got a coffee the next day. Took about a year of going through the process, meeting everyone on the team, kind of being a consultant of just communicating my opinions, X, Y, and Z before obviously an opportunity presented itself. And then I applied and got it. But look, everything in this game is relationships. You never know. Like I tell everyone, especially kids, especially young coaches, like shake everyone's hand. Because especially now, like I even see it, like I had a funny situation happen to me last week where actually it happened in the summer, but the PD guy for the White Sox wasn't answering my phone. And I had talked to him 3-4 times, over the last month about my player with the White Sox. And all of a sudden, for like 2 weeks, he wasn't answering his phone. And then all of a sudden I see breaking news. He got promoted to GM. So I shot him a congratulations text. Like, yeah, sorry, it's been crazy. We caught up. It was great. But he gets a GM job with the White Sox. And 2 weeks ago, we're talking about players and, what my guy needs to do to get better. And then, fast forward to the fall, I'm talking to one of my really close friends who is Paul Yanish, who played in the big leagues for 18 years and was the hitting coach at Rice. And when he jumped into being a coach at Rice, he's like, hey, man, like, I think I can be good at this. I don't know. Then he got the recruiting coordinator job. So he's hitting me up about guys for the transfer portal era that he thinks, I need these guys. Who's in the portal, like up in your area that I should look at? And I was like, here, told him to look at a guy, ended up getting him to come over. And we just kept in touch. I went down there, said hello to him, grabbed a bite. Like had a really good relationship for 3 years. Well, what does Chris Getz do? Who's his director of player development? Paul Yanish. So all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, dude. Like now I'm going to work with you with Mike for the next year. You're my point of contact. And like we were sitting at the restaurant 6 months ago and he was the hitting coach at Rice talking hitting. Now he's a PD guy. And just to make it even crazier is I got a guy in AAA with the Diamondbacks. I'm talking to his PD guy. And all of a sudden he gets the assistant GM job. So all three guys at the top of the White Sox organization I was talking to in the last month in different roles. Now all of a sudden they're together. So like you never know kind of in this industry. Like if you understand the game and you're a good dude and you're trustworthy and you work your butt off, like there's going to be opportunities for you always, because that's who you want to align yourself with. And to follow up with how I got the job, the funny thing is, so when I kind of started talking, we got coffee kind of about my story. One of the first ever guys Octagon hired as well, I shouldn't say hired. They advised as a college player back in the 90s was Jim Foster at Providence College, when Providence College used to be one of the top college programs in the country. Jim Foster was the coach at Rhode Island that said to me, hey, man, probably shouldn't play. Like, let's get into it. Let's teach you how to coach. So, like, when that's your first resource, now, like, there's someone that I worked with 9 years ago, but remember the work ethic, who I was. We kept in touch. We worked together. And now all of a sudden, that's the guy that was the first call for my, reference. Like, hey, is this guy, do you know this guy? And so, like, that's one of the things that you never really, people are always going to remember how you make them feel, how you left them in a work ethic side. And in this game, we compete every single day in every aspect of life, but like, it's about how you are as a teammate. It's like, and it's not really, I wouldn't say a teammate as much in the dugout as it's a teammate of like on your coaching staff. It's a teammate at an agency. It's, treating, one thing that, Klosterman at Bryant taught me, and this really has hit me hard in the last 4 years, this was a Vanderbilt thing. Ryan played at Vanderbilt when he was in school, and like one of their things, and he kind of carries with him his whole career, and I envy him. He's like, you treat everyone with the same amount of love and respect, whether it's the janitor, whether it's a scout, whether it's a teacher, and like that's his non-negotiable, and that's something where he's exactly right. And that's something that carries with you in your character wherever you go. And you see certain players, the players that do that are usually pretty good. They're usually the ones that are leaders, ones that are captains, ones that everyone looks up to, ones like, hey, do what that guy does. And that's something that, you don't need skill for. And that's something that I think is really important in this day and age in all aspects of careers, like those little intangibles that are like, I'm going to fight for that guy. I'm going to pick up the phone for that guy. And that's something I think is really important. And Zane, you could speak to it too, but you want someone in your foxhole that's going to have your back, is going to work just as hard as you, it's going to push you, but the same token, respect you. And, I always say it's the same thing as being an agent, right? We want to be the guy that you call when you're 0 for 10 with 9 strikeouts and you have a smile on your face when you're talking to. You want, like, when you lose and you're down 15-2 in the fourth, you want to be able to get dinner with your head coach and your assistant coach, because you're going to figure it out. Guys that get emotional and pissy and get into these negative mindsets, like you can't really come out of that hole, and you kind of like end up butting heads instead of like, all right, let's figure it out. Let's talk this through. Let's see what we got to do.
That's pretty much what I like preach to our pitching staff, like day one when they step foot on campus, is look, like we got to kind of be the glue of this team when it comes to, being the pitching staff. Like we got to set the standard. We want them to play good defense behind us. Well, we got to be on time. We got to be wearing the right stuff. We can't be causing issues off the field. Right? We got to be having good grades. We got to be on top of it. Right? We want them to score runs for us. Well, they're going to be more likely to do that if we show that they can trust us day in, day out, and we're putting in like the most work out of anyone.
Again, folks, we're talking to Eric Hirschbein-Bodnar, H-Bod. He is a sports agent at Octagon Baseball. And I'm kind of curious, Eric, what are some of the commonalities, the traits of some of the players that are able to move up, every step of the way, succeed, stay, not only get to the big leagues, but stay there? Why don't you mention some of the players that you represent now and some of those common traits that make players successful?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the pros that I have right now are Taylor Rossi, who's in AAA with the Diamondbacks, Michael Turner, who's in AA with the White Sox, Brandon Garcia, who's in High A with the Mariners, and Travis Honeyman, who's in just got drafted in High A with the Cardinals, and then Trey Dombrowski, who's in High A with the Astros. All of them really have a common theme in that their work ethic is second to none. They're really smart in their development. They're not afraid to look in the mirror and say, what was I successful with? What wasn't? Like I said, it's our job to communicate with the teams what they need to do to get better every offseason. But the one thing I think is very common between all of them is that they're great teammates. Their care factor is second to none, and that's the care of their process, their body, their family, their friends, our relationship with them. They're really good dudes, and that's something that we do a really good job in recruiting. Is it's not just about the talent. It's guys, like I said, that you want to be in your foxhole with, guys you want to go to bat for, guys that are going to represent themselves at a high manner, that aren't going to be an issue off the field. Because at the end of the day, like, you're going to have to fight for them more than you're not. Like it's a funny commonality, but when you're doing well, everyone's giving you a high five. But when you're doing poorly, like that's our job. Like you're going to come to us, and we're going to be the ones that are, hey, we're good, we're calm. Like we're a lot of therapists too. A lot of these guys, like you think about it, you're on the road in the minors in the middle of nowhere. You're by yourself. Girlfriend's not there, fiance's not there, mom, dad. No one's there. Your teammates are changing because you're up and down, moving. Every single day. Coaches change every year, so it's hard to, and you're treated like a professional. We say all the time with guys that are kind of in between the draft and college, right? Some guys, it's a maturity thing. Are you going to be able to get the money you want and go and be a professional? And some guys just aren't ready to, who's going to kick your behind at 6 a.m. and get you in the gym before start? Who's going to make you run and flush out all the lactic acid out of your body? Like certain guys are wound that way. And I think that, we got some really good pros, and the two guys at the top right now, I mean, Julio Rodriguez and Bobby Witt Jr. that are with us, I mean, they're second to none with their work ethic. They got a high motor, they're super intense, but they're putting time in right now, and like those are the guys that we tell our younger guys kind of look up to. They're the faces of baseball right now at a young age, but they do things the right way. They play with emotion, they play with passion, they play hard. But like right now, I mean, you got a camera following them around, you're like, oh my God, like they're working harder than they do in the season. Because this is when the time is to make sure that they can play all 162 games.
Those
You gotta give me some Julio stories, H-Bod. I mean, have you met him? Like,
I haven't met him yet. But I know his team really well, and they're, like I said, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you think about it, right? Like there's probably 20, 22 off days in the major league season. I don't know how much there are, but like Julio's booked for 16 of them. And booked what I'm saying, like doing a shoot here, doing a podcast here, like going to a kid's factory here, like these guys, like their brand, their personalities, but like they got a job to do that's off the baseball field too. Things like you can design contracts, and as long as you have a good agent and a smart people working with you, it's going to get done. And the Shohei one is, that's a new, bigger one on a big market that, kind of, if you think about it, makes a lot of sense.
Do you think this is going to be kind of more of a mainstream, like I guess not mainstream trend, but I guess a more talked about thing in contracts moving forward?
I think that every guy's different. I think you're not going to see it obviously with older players. I think that it also depends on what guys want. Guys want money now. Is it going to be the difference of a team of signing with one team versus another? Hey, we'll give you $35 million this year today. Or like, hey, we're going to wait 6 years to pay you. I think it's all preference on the guys and obviously what their plan is. And I mean, the Dodgers may have said, hey, man, we're going to make this big contract for you. But his camp may have been like, all right, well, what can you do for the fact that you don't have the pieces to win right now? And they're like, well, we can add it if we do it this way. Like there's different scenarios, I think, that we don't know what was said kind of in the room. But obviously, I mean, they're very aggressive right now in Yamamoto. They're very aggressive on different guys. And they're obviously trying to add probably 2 arms, I would say. Maybe they need a shortstop. So, like, there's different pieces they need that now, like, being able to do that, they can afford that, where if they didn't, I don't know if they could have.
So I guess my question would be, kind of in the lines of this podcast where we have people listening, some might be dads coaching their kids, what advice do you have for parents that are coaching their kids and putting a lot of pressure on them? I mean, at what age is it like the time as a dad or as a coach to say, hey, like if you really want to get serious about this stuff, you better put the time in, as opposed to like, just letting them be kids and have fun.
I mean, I think that, look, like you kind of know when your kid's at the next level. There's certain things you could see, size, ability, strength, whatever. But I think that, look, kids are going to be kids. They're going to develop at a different time than everyone else. Like I always say, like, what's the difference between a Division III and a Division I player? The Division III kid just hit his development later. I see a lot of kids, especially in the Northeast, where I think that, I think like 12 or 13 of the top 25 Division III schools are out of the Northeast. I mean, I see kids all the time coming over, in the summer, and they're throwing 93, and you're like, where does that kid from? Oh, he's from, Salve Regina University. He's from UMass Boston. He's from Eastern Connecticut. And it's like, those kids they can pitch fine at the Division I level. They just developed at 18, 19, 20 and learned how to put on weight, to lift the right way, to unleash their arm strength in a certain way, where other guys developed at 15U at the, WWBA down in Jupiter or whatever it may be. But I think that, look, you're going to really make your jumps in high school. You're going to know when you're playing against the best of the best. You start getting rated at perfect game events. But, I think that parents don't need to put pressure on their kids. Like, look, if you're good, they're going to find you. you're going to have a skill. People are going to start to notice it. People are going to start to talk to you. But the seriousness of it is, look, you should be playing every sport, not just baseball. If you excel at baseball, it's great. But if you excel at lacrosse, at football, you can do whatever you want. But also, it's one of those things, like, don't put pressure on, like, we always say don't put pressure on the draft, right? The draft's going to happen. But if you do get picked, guess what? The next day is first day on the job. And your clock is ticking. You need to be better than the guys next to you. So realistically, I mean, making sure you're at a good college, making sure you have and when I say good college, it's not the shiniest college on the tool. It's like, making sure you go to the right school with the right fit for you, where the coaches believe in you, where you have a role, like, especially with the transfer portal now, it's freaking crazy. And I mean, the hardest thing I think in this more than anything is the stress these kids taking on mentally. And like making sure, I mean, look, we're recruiting high school kids right now to be their advisors. And the biggest thing is like the trust and the group and making sure that the guy you're with, A, believes in you, B, is going to roll up his sleeves and do the work for you, but C, is going to point you in the right direction and make sure that you're making the right fit. You're communicating with scouts, communicating with coaches, and communicating with mom and dad. I say all the time, especially underclassmen in high school, like, play all the sports you want. Like, if you're focusing just on baseball, you're A, going to hate the sport. B, you're probably going to get hurt. C, you're going to take away from your livelihood of growing up and being nurtured in life. Like, go play basketball. Go play lacrosse. Go play football. I always said this, in my life, I ran track in the fall, played baseball in the spring, and in the winter I swam. And we had like a nationally recognized swim team being on the South Shore of Long Island. We would all get certified to be lifeguards like throughout, through the season. But it was the best group of guys, the closest team I was on. And look, I mean, there was 45 guys on the team. They were all baseball players, lacrosse players, football players. There was cross training, and we were really, really good. But the competitive nature and how I learned how to compete and love the guy next to you that are still my friends today, like, that's where I learned how to be a leader and how to compete. I was swimming on a swim team for 3 years, and a sport where, I never had a chance of playing in college or doing that. Didn't really think of it anything more than just like, this is light on my knees and my shoulders and I could really get better. And I learned how to be a good teammate, how to be a leader, and that carried over to the baseball field. That carried over to my coaching life. That stayed with me my entire career. And that was something I learned from another sport. So there's certain ins and outs, I think, especially in high school, where, look, if you're a senior and you're obviously a high talented draft guy, like, you probably shouldn't play basketball that winter, but you're a sophomore and junior year, like, yeah, go play hoops in the winter. Go play football, maybe not linebacker, running back, maybe quarterback, wide receiver, but at the same token, it's like, I'm not going to tell a kid to not be a kid, and I think that has a lot to do with even just talking to kids throughout the process and remembering that they're kids. You're trying to teach them and nurture them and not tell them you need to do this, because there's no right answer. If there was a recipe on what you need to do to be a professional baseball player, everybody would do it. But every body's different, every swing's different, every delivery is different, and trying to give little tidbits on advice, like they're gonna mature into their own player.
Before we wrap things up here, Zane, do you want to ask one more question, and then Zach ask one more question, and then we can respect H-Pod's time.
You got 20 minutes. We're good.
No, I mean, I think probably along the lines of what Dad asked was a little similar of, well, I guess not. So I guess side of things, I spent 3 summers in the Northwoods League coaching. I guess this is kind of something I ask a lot of people in front office roles or scouting roles is like, what kind of advice are you giving to guys? And I'm sure it varies on each kid, but, when they're looking at, playing summer ball and they're in college, like, is there a lot of weight in certain leagues, like the Cape or the Northwoods League? And like, are you guys saying like, hey, go to the Northwoods League because it may translate to pro ball a little bit better? How do you guys go about advising on that?
I think that number one, they all matter because it's wood bat. I mean, wood bat is definitely important because of the statistics of wood bats are important. Going to a league that has track mandate is really important, so you can actually, get your stats kind of accumulated. I mean, nowadays they're looking at the draft. It's a formula. It's whatever formula they have based on your data that they can solidify you're a first rounder, fifth rounder, whatever. I think every league is different. Like, look, the goal is to play a Team USA. Goal is to play the Cape. I mean, arguably, I think we're the second best league. I think the Northwoods is definitely top 5. But the only thing that stinks about the Northwoods is an 88-game schedule. So a lot of guys are afraid to send their guys after a 60-game schedule. So an 88, I mean, we're 44, Cape's 40. So, like, you know, you kind of get that sprint, but like enough to give them 100 at bats, 30 innings, and make sure like that's great to get them the experience, get them away from home. But here's the other thing. Some of these kids have never been away from mom and dad, 5 coaches, the ACC, the SEC have like everything they need. They have $20 million facilities. When you come to my field, you're living in a host family. You're doing a school reading day 4 days a week. You know, you're competing 6 nights a week with 1 off day. So you got to push your body, put the right things in your body. You're on a bus till, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. And then you got to wake up and go read to a school at 8. And then you're back at the ballpark at 1, to do be early work and then BP. So like, you're really kind of the first time away on your own, and you have to handle yourself like a pro. Because if you don't, like, you're going to regress. Your coaches are going to see that. Scouts are going to see that. A lot of it's weight on the experience because that's like a minor league schedule. So I think every league has its difference. Where I think like your league, Zane, in the Northwoods, like if I was a Power 5 guy, didn't play as a freshman, especially a position player, go get 400 at bats, please. And unfortunately now, I think with summer ball, you're seeing 2 different things too. One, the mid-major schools are definitely hiding their players because they're good. Like all of a sudden, like Arkansas is like, hey man, like you're pretty good. Why don't you come over here? And I'm just saying that for example. I'm not saying Arkansas does that, but or you're like or you're like, hey, you didn't play that much for us this year. You got to go play in the summer, and all of a sudden now coach is sitting there watching your stats every week, saying, hey, I don't think this guy can play for us. Hey, we might want to go in a different direction. You might want to use this to get in the portal and find somewhere else. So I think that's an ideology of summer ball that's changed, unfortunately, but it does have a need for it. Because don't forget, coaches' jobs are to win. They're to, win now, not win in 3 years. If you lose for 3 years and then you're like, oh, but I got the pieces now, you're probably already fired. So I think that's at the higher level. So I think that's definitely a resource and a need, but it's all relative. And I think that obviously if you're close to home, like there's certain different things, but look, all the summer ball leagues are good. I mean, I think that with the TrackMan, you can that's the most important thing is get your data calculated and get it out to the scouts so they can see that and create a baseline or see how you're trending. But, I think that they're all important and you need to go play. Like I hate kids like, oh, I'm going to train in the summer. I'm like, great. You can throw 94 in a tunnel, but you can't throw a strike in a game. Pressure, that's a real thing. Playing in between the lines is a real thing. You got the most beautiful swing in the world. Can't hit a breaking ball, you got no shot. And also here's the other thing. Kids are so coddled these days and told they're so good. Like they need to get between the lines and go compete. Some kids don't know that because they didn't play that year. Or they played at a lower level and they think they can play at the next level. And no, go play against the best of the best. Go prove yourself and compete every damn night on a high school field. Not a perfectly groomed dirt, grass cut to the tee every day with $1 million gym and a strength coach making $200,000 up your butt. Like, no, you're gonna have to go to Planet Fitness and push yourself, son. There's all different ways that are innuendos that actually, are important.
I don't know, Zane. Our high school field was pretty legit, wasn't it?
You can call it something.
It wasn't legit, Eric.
Made you better.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to touch on the agent side, just like, I guess in a nutshell. I mean, you were hired last fall. You've been doing this for a year. I know like there's like testing you have to do and all of that. Can you just give us like a brief like run through how you like acquire these players, how long you're with the players, kind of like the track of
yeah, I mean, look, I think you're always recruiting. I think a lot of it's based on, like I said, relationships, reputation, believing in the player believing that you're going to roll up your sleeves and go to work every day. I mean, look, this is my office right here. When this thing rings, I answer, I think that for me, one of my biggest lines that I live by is like, look, I might not know all the answers, but I know someone that does. So the resource factor of like, unfortunately, God forbid a kid gets hurt. It's like making sure that phone call and that person that's looking at the imaging is the best of the best in the country. I think that there's, we signed a kid a month ago. And the first thing we did, because he wanted to, throw a little harder, but he's on a program and his body's great, is like, He's already big, he's physical. Like, we're getting him down to Cressy. Let's go and work at Cressy for a week and see and let them evaluate his plan. And there's a reason that they have 9 or 10 Cy Youngs that work out there every winter. He's the best of the best. And we're like, hey, you're down there. We're going to see your body move. We're going to get you on a force plate, see what adjustments we can make, and maybe we can get 1 mile an hour out of the back hip and being looser. But I think, look, the day-to-day is you're working every day for your guys, whatever they need. Whether right now we're pitching guys to different equipment companies to get equipment deals. We're working on marketing companies to get guys what they need, for the off season and in spring training. Talking to teams, trying to get guys to prospect camps, get them up there. Making sure we're in touch with their personal coaches. Hey, what do you see? How's he feeling? Can we focus a little bit more? What's his data look like? Send it over so I can send it to the team. College guys, preparing them for the draft, communicating with them. I mean, I think that I talk to my guys, I'd say every week. Every week it's a phone call. How you doing? How you feeling? How's mom and dad? How you feel mentally? Like, that's a big thing. Sometimes guys need to talk about certain things going on in their lives and they want to or they don't. But just having that constant contact once a week, like just checking in, I mean, that's important,
Absolutely. So it's a big aspect of the game that a lot of people don't really think about, right?
Yeah.
Right, Dad?
For sure. I mean, whatever you do in life, you have to have the right attitude and be able to adjust. I think that's what I've always told, my kids and my players when I coached, was be able to make adjustments. And sometimes making adjustments is, in the middle of a game, maybe it's a 16U game and you're playing out of town for the first time, right? And you have to make adjustments because you've never seen this type of pitching, or, maybe the umpire is really bad that day. You got to make adjustments, right? And I think if you make adjustments as you keep getting older, it's only going to make you better because, not everything is going to be consistent.
Well,
the fields aren't going to be beautiful every day.
Well, it's funny because, I'll say 2 things here, Zane. I think you can attest to this, but, we always talk about hitters at like the different college levels, right? So I would say like a Division III kid, right, takes him about a couple weeks to make an adjustment. Division II kid takes a couple games to make an adjustment. Division I kid takes a couple at bats. Professional player takes a couple pitches. And that's kind of what you can see as a hitter. Like, you could fool him on one slider, the next one he's going to have a different plan. He's going to see something and evaluate mentally, step out of the box, and boom, he's ready. He's not going to miss that pitch again. So I think like that's a huge kind of tell offensively. But also, I'll talk to my old head coach at Bryant. He always said this. He was like, a little quote that he used to live by, which is kind of funny. He's like, you don't have time to stretch when you get pushed at a bar. It's like, you're always on go. And that's something that kind of stuck with me. Like, I'm always on go. I'm always, I'm on a plane. I'll see you there. All right, I'll get in the car. I'll go see you. I think that, say 90% of our job is being there for our guys, showing up. A lot of it's doing good business, but the most important thing is being there, good, bad, ugly, just being present in our guys' careers and their lives, with mom and dad, with them. Like, just they're part of our family. We're a part of their family. And if you're not doing it for the right reason.
Love it.
All good stuff. Well, it's been great to have you on today's podcast, Eighth Pod, and we really appreciate your insights into every aspect of the game, because you really covered the ground for anyone listening to this podcast. And like the theme of our show, which is fulfilling your dreams and taking it to the next level. Everyone has dreams, aspirations, right? But the difference makers are the ones that actually put in the work. And Zane, I guess I'll let you ask the last question here about putting in the work, because I'm sure that's the theme of you as a coach, right? Of telling these kids and inspire them. If you want to get better, you got to put in the work.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I said earlier in the podcast, was like prep them from August until now, to where these next 3 to 4 weeks, those kids are gone on their own. Like, I know they're in a really good spot. I'm still going to reach out to every single kid while they're gone and talk to them while they're gone, and they're still going to send me video nonstop. But, I mean, like you say, making sure you're there for them and making sure you're present and they know that you really care about them. I mean, that's kind of the biggest part for a lot of kids today. I'm sure that's something that you guys kind of preach to your guys is, look, like, I'm not I'm not just saying this stuff to you because, I'm technically working with you or work for you.
Yeah, and I think
I truly care.
Yeah, just to touch on that, I mean, like, look, like you kind of look through, especially like my group of the, 5 or 6 guys that I work with on my team, because like we're separated, right? Like I have 5 or 6 guys that work in North America. We got 4 people that work in the Venezuela, 5 people that work in Dominican, 1 guy, Yoshi, was over in Japan. And like, we're specialists in our own division, right? Like you're not going to take a kid from Long Island and say, hey, go recruit in Venezuela. I can't relate in those situations, right? But everybody in our department is so supportive and so competitive together, right? We're trying to grow the team. How can I help you? What can I do? But I think like certain things in just competing against life, I call it, like, and Zach, you follow me on Instagram, like I take lifting very seriously, right? I find it's the only time, it's the best part of my life, in the fact where I get to push my body and push my mind, right? Just to really, like, either before work day, after work day, really empty the tank, right? But the more important underlying issue of that is like, look, I don't lift for the physique in the mirror. I'm a bigger guy, but I lift because like I can't keep my players accountable. I can't preach the way I preach about working hard and this and that if I don't do it myself. So that's like one thing where I think, and even when I was coaching, like, how am I going to get on you about getting your lifts in and doing this if I'm not doing it myself? So that's a little thing to talk about, and it's something you relate to guys with, right? Like, oh, it's cold out, I don't want to go to the gym, but you have to check a box. You have to go, put the right thing in your body. You have to, hydrate and drink extra water because you're going to cramp up. You're going to get hurt. Like there's certain things we have to do in this industry that we might be tired. We might not want to do it, but guess what? Someone else is. And that's something where I think personally, you talk about working hard, emptying the tank. It's doing things that you might not want to do, that you might not think are necessary, but how can I push someone if I'm not pushing myself?
Yeah, Eric, it's been awesome. Really appreciate your time. I know this is your busy season. But yeah, man, we appreciate it. Me and my dad, Zane, and Ty. Hopefully we can get you on again sometime when things are less stressful time of year. But yeah, man, thanks again.
Yeah, I think that I'll leave you with one more thing. That anyone who works in this industry, right, it takes like a village to get there, no matter what it is, playing, coaching. I mean, I'm sure that there's always going to be those ups and downs, but look, you follow me on Instagram, Zach, I use it as a scrapbook, right? Because like everything we do, like you want to bring everyone along for the ride. And it's like, I'm living out a dream that I had as a young kid, but at the same token, it's like, it's something that I want to share with people and like help people. Like, I can't tell you how many guys, it's funny right now, how many guys have played for me that are working in the industry, that are coaching, that are front office members. I mean, it's even funnier. Last year I had a kid who is my dad's best friend's nephew, right? And he was a host brother in the Maryland and the Cal Ripken League for years. And he wanted to get into baseball. Said, come up here. Came up here, Rhode Island, worked next to my analytics guy. By the end of the summer, he was doing all our TrackMan input, right? And he's a sophomore at South Carolina. And he emailed, didn't hear anything back, like in the summer, spring, fall at South Carolina. I said, hey, man, put on a polo, tuck your shirt in, brush your hair, go knock on the coach's office and say, hey, I'm here. Well, he's now their director of baseball analytics at the University of South Carolina. And because when he walked in and said, hey, I have this experience, I worked at Ocean State, boom, 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 boom. I'm fluent in Synergy, TrackMan, and I helped write scouting reports, right? He went into the office, sat down. He was way ahead of all the other applicants, had 30 people, got the job. At all fall, he wrote mock scouting reports, sent them to me. What do I think? I gave him my 2 cents, kind of how he should look. And now guess what? He's a director of analytics at South Carolina as a junior. He's in the SEC, and he's coming back next summer. He's going to be our head analytics guy at the organization. But, he kind of like seeing him progress and develop is as important to me as one of my guys getting drafted. Just in the fact that, like, I care, like, this was an opportunity for him to come in and spread his wings. And, like, he's going to end up working with the Blue Jays or the Yankees or Miami in 3 years, but I'm gonna remember where he started and watching him grow. And now, like, his story, I'm like, hey, you give back to the next kid. So I think like that mantra and that just mentality, and like even like us hopping on here, Zach, we connected 7 years ago. We've kept in touch, and like that to me personally is so important to like have everyone along to get them better and just learn about the industry, because we all love this game. We do it for the right reasons. If you were doing it for the wrong reason and you were a dick about it, we wouldn't still be friends. It's like that's something I think is And Zane, you could say too, like in the coaching world, like you work with guys that you want to work with that are good dudes. They could be the hardest competitors in the world, but when the game's over, they're shaking their hand, you're chopping it up, and like next thing you know, you might be coaching at the University of Indiana, he might be at University of Illinois, and you guys are still boys and you're still competing against each other. You're on the road recruiting, but you're all going through the same stuff. So I think like that's an underlying importance in this industry that kind of gets overlooked at times.
We'll get the analytics kid on our next podcast, Dad. He is Eric H. Bod, sports agent from Octagon Baseball. You can follow us on Twitter at BLDPOD. Send us an email. Tell us who we should have on next, bigleaguedreaming@gmail.com. And thanks for tuning in to today's episode, everybody. Take care.